The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of CNS Channel 6.
Good day to you again, and welcome to another edition of Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for joining us again this week. Great to be back with you. Last week we did a rebroadcast, and we focused on the program that we did the week before. And at times when I realize that the truth hurts and the truth stirs people up, I like to bring it back a bit. And the reviews that we got on the YouTube channel after we had that conversation with Ganesh Maipal, where he spoke the facts about the propaganda coming from the opposition side and, the way they use certain sections of our society, I realized that got under the skin of some of the supporters. So I only, being true to myself, and those of you who follow me on social media know that I would have said this. I'm very true to myself, and I realized that the truth really hit a nerve and it touched a spot. So I decided to bring that program back last week. So of course I wasn't here live in person, but we continue to get reviews on that particular conversation, and I know people were really interested in hearing what Ganesh had to say. Ganesh Maipal, for those of you who would have missed that conversation, Ganesh Maipal is one of the communications officers there in Region 3, and he had a lot to say about some of the things that would have been happening in the region, of course, both positive and negative. So we decided to bring that back last week. Again, those of you who missed that, as always, you can go to my YouTube channel to get almost every single program that you would have missed would have been uploaded there. Today, I'm going to return because we've been having conversations, we've been having interviews on Facing the Nation for the last 3 weeks or so, maybe a month. So we're going to take a break from that, and we're going to return to what we started doing, recapping what would have taken place during the week. And if you see me looking down every now and again, I have a part of the People's National Congress is released to read for you today. And you know how modern technology is. I don't want to lose it, and then the phone locks me out, obviously, because it's only on my phone and not printed, because that press conference would have been held an hour ago. And we try to get things as fresh as we possibly can to blend it in with the recap that we would have started doing, the things that would have passed. So if you see me looking down at my phone, I'm just trying to ensure that the phone doesn't lock, so I wouldn't be on air being distracted trying to open the phone. Again, we're going to try to mix fresh things with some of the things that would have already occurred. All of Ghana is focusing on GECOM and waiting to hear what President Granger will say when he will say it. But remember, our position is always this. It always has been that the government cannot tell the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, when and how to do its work. The president has said from the beginning that he will abide by the Constitution, and that's what the government has been doing so far. Of course, barring all of the legal ramifications and the questions and the challenges, whether in the local courts or the CCJ, all of those things blended. And people like to remind us that, hey, we're in uncharted waters. Almost every single thing that is happening now regarding our parliament, regarding politics, most of it is fairly new. Even if not new to every single person. Remember, we have a large young generation, a large new generation. We always like to boast that the majority of the voting population, they're youths. Sometimes it really irks me, because as much as we boast about that, there are often times when society as a whole fail our young people. But the fact is, coming back, sometimes I digress and I ramble on. The fact is that we are in uncharted waters, and a lot of things are happening. I just want to remind you, while these things are happening, you're going to find a lot of misinformation being placed out there. I don't have all the answers. No television anchor has all the answers. Actually, no reporter, no journalist has all the answers. But they can decipher based on what they get from our nation's leaders, whether in politics or else, and that is how they will try to feed information. election. But I'm saying all that to say, especially the information that you get on social media, try your best to find a way in which you can filter it to verify, what are the truths, what is actually propaganda, because you're going to find a lot of that happening. Fake news, I think fake news is the order of the day around the world. I mean, if you look at the international news, again, some of us, we actually work on social media, so it is sometimes very tasky to pull and try to decipher the lies from the truth. You're going to be finding all of that happening in our society at this point as we prepare to go to an elections, whenever those elections will be, whenever GECOM says it's ready. And at this point, when GECOM says it's ready, the only person can tell us when the elections would be the president of our country. But enough of that for now. Again, the People's National Congress Reform continues its weekly press conferences as they restarted that a few months ago, and it has been ongoing since then. I want to begin the program today, even though we don't have the actual footage from that, because of the time that press conference was held, and then Facing the Nation comes up almost immediately after that. Yes, we're still somewhat behind at our offices when it comes to technology, but we're trying, and we have improved over the last 5 years or so, but we're trying as much as possible. So what I'm going to do is try to read what I believe are the important parts of the press statement that would have been read to the media, of course, before the panelists took questions today. The press conference would have been conducted by the General Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform, and of course she is also the Minister of I'm getting confused with my ministers here, and I think I just had a senior moment. The Minister of Social Protection, the Honorable Amna Ali, she's also the government chief whip. She held that press conference today with the National Secretary. Usually it is hosted by the National Chairman of the youth arm of the People's National Congress, Mr. Ryan Belgrave, but today it was chaired by the National Secretary, Mr. Brian Smith. So let me get right to the gist of the today's press conference, which is basically that the PNCR agrees with the GECOM Chair. As some of you would have known by now, earlier in the week, the GECOM Chair took a unilateral decision that the GECOM's current house-to-house registration will come to an end on the 31st of August 2019, which is tomorrow, Saturday. So today's PNCR's press conference surrounded that. I begin. The PNCR will continue to advocate for a credible list of electors. The People's National Congress Reform remains committed to respecting the independence of the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, the laws of our country, and upholding the Constitution of Guyana. The PNCR has always advocated for the holding of credible elections in the shortest possible time. In this regard, we are in agreement with the chairperson of GECOM that a credible list is critical to a fair and free election. The Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana mandates, and I quote, "The Commission, GECOM, shall exercise general direction and supervision over the registration of electors and administrative conduct of all elections of members of the National Assembly. The PNCR respects and recognizes the GECOM, and that GECOM and only GECOM has that authority. The People's Progressive Party is prepared to go to the polls with any list. They don't care if the list is corrupted." Why? And of course, we all know, this is the truth. The opposition leaders time and time again said he was against the GECOM's house-to-house registration. However, the PNCR will continue to advocate for a credible list of electors. Guyanese need a voters list they can trust to hold elections they can trust, to give them a government that they can trust. This is central to our democracy and our future. It is essential that we hold fair and free elections and credible elections, and we cannot do so if the people of Guyana believe that the list is outdated and corrupted. The process that GECOM employs to sanitize the list must therefore take into consideration the concerns expressed. The PNCR is pleased that the data gathered from the current house-to-house registration will be considered in the new list of electors. The PNCR will use the proposed extended claims and objections period to rigorously pursue and where necessary further sanitize the new list of electors. And I think that's a very important aspect of it, whereby the focus, so even persons who were not able to, in the month or so that GECOM was doing the house registration, there is still that window period where the claims and objections period will continue. But to continue from the PNCR's press statement, the PNCR and our partners that make up the APNU AFC coalition are in full election mode. We are ready. The PPP have had their time, and their track record proves that they are dishonest, unscrupulous, and too incompetent to govern our country again. The PNCR calls on all Guyanese to be alert and not be confused by the disinformation being peddled by the PPP. Irfan Ali and his PPP have used the tactics of disinformation and dishonesty. One, and there are two main ones that I noticed the press statement focused on today. One, attempting to influence independent bodies like GECOM, trying to force their own election dates and political agenda. And two, inciting violence against GECOM staff in their work to help citizens exercise their right to vote. It is clear that the PPP has not changed and remain the same party that Guyanese voted out of office in 2015. There is more to the statement, but I find that is the gist of it. And again, for those of you who are now tuning in, I asked to be excused because I was actually reading that statement from my phone, because it was released just a few minutes or so before we came on air with Facing the Nation. But again, I think the important things coming out of the statement is that, persons, I know people have begun to panic. Well, claims of claims and the registration period will come to an end tomorrow, and they have begun to get worried, and people are getting flustered. And I know some of the GECOM staff would have been under pressure because everyone is now trying to call the GECOM office and see if they're going to reach their areas between when that announcement would have been made earlier in the week on Saturday, which is tomorrow. So, but this is just to remind you not to lose heart, don't lose hope. There is still what is supposed to be, and I'm using the word that I heard in the media, in the general media, extensive claims and objections period, where people will still have an opportunity. And those of you who are watching right now, I mean, if you can make contact with your cluster offices or however you're doing it, I can't speak for every single area. You still have some hope. There is, you have the rest of today, because I know they've been working around the clock, and there is tomorrow, because that it ends tomorrow. So again, and even if you don't get a chance to register, according to what was released, the chairman made it quite clear that there will be a merging of the registration, the persons who would have been registered in this period, with that of the old. I mean, some people still don't necessarily agree with that, but there are a lot of logistics and fine details to be worked out at this point. And I know for a fact that not everyone, even some people who are, in the some of the GECOM leadership positions, they don't necessarily have all the answers at this point. So I know it's going to take some getting used to at this point. I think my operator is trying to signal to us. What I'm trying to explain is that there's still some amount of time left that you can get all that you need to get done. All right, I'm going to come back to some of what was said in the PNCR's press conference today, just to remind you of, now is not the time to get flustered. Now is the time for all of us as Guyanese to remain calm. I mean, yes, I'm sounding as though I'm getting flustered, but I'm not. But now is the time for us to remain calm, be supportive as we can, and the fear-mongering and the bitterness, especially the continued bitterness on social media, and it seems that's where racism these days is rearing its head, and I don't understand it. And some people make it their life. They're on there from morning till night and not doing anything positive, but spewing negative things, especially politically. But as I said, I'm going to come back to this a little later on in our program and remind you of that. I'm trying to see how much information I can pack into today's program. Aside from that, there are other things happening in our society. For example, I have reached a point where I'm not sure what else to say regarding men killing women, women being abused, domestic violence, all of it. It's basically falling under one umbrella. And it hurts my heart, because I'm a woman. Not only am I a woman, I have a brother, I have a younger sibling. He's a man, obviously. It is not only affecting our women, it's affecting our women more. It's also affecting our men. And I am so confused. I am no professional where that issue is concerned. I'm not a social worker. But sometimes I wonder, why is it that we cannot seem to uh, even if not get rid of it completely, which would be my hope for us one day, for the entire world one day. But violence against women, and it's not only, that's the thing, it's not only violence against women. And the reason I'm going down this road now, my first clip today is a message from our First Lady, the First Lady of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, one of the staffers over there at Ministry of the Presidency, one of the communication staffers, would have done an interview, basically sought out a comment from her earlier this week about the recent, again, cases of men murdering women. In one case, I think we had last week, the man killed himself, another one attempted to kill himself. She looked it into the fact that interpersonal violence is real, because it's not only violence against women. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we read in one of our dailies that one man stabbed his drinking partner to death over the last shot of alcohol in the bottle, and I don't understand that. Another day, you had a story about one stabbing another one to death after they've been imbibing for a while, over $200. We're consuming alcohol to the point whereby it's clouding your judgment, and you don't understand what you're doing. And that is why I'm telling you that one of the things that would have been done is it's looped into interpersonal violence. So it's not only the men beating and killing the women, but there's the men are doing it to themselves, and based on the fact that they're also abusing alcohol. So it's different levels and different forms of abuse in our country, and it really is unfortunate, and it's sad that we cannot seem to get a handle it, to get control on it, and to reduce these cases. But you've heard enough from me for the beginning of the program. So what I'm going to do now, it's just a few minutes, it's about 10 minutes or so. Here is the First Lady responding to some questions regarding violence and so on in our society, and violence against women. This is Facing the Nation. Stay with us.
Good morning, First Lady.
Morning, over to you.
This morning we want to talk a little about domestic violence. For 2 days in a row last week, we would have witnessed the killings of two women in domestic violence situations. Could you tell us your general thoughts on that, and how do you think we as Guyanese and even leaders can play a critical role in helping to reduce these incidences?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize the fact that domestic violence is not only physical. We would have seen a manifestation of the physical nature of domestic violence, but there's also violence against the person, which could be psychological abuse. I mean, really belittling a person in any relationship, which is a symbol of the power of the perpetrator. And this happens throughout the country, across the races, across the classes, across ethnicities. So we have to say what it is that makes people feel that they must demonstrate this power, because it's not love, it's power, against the person. Are the egos of our males so stunted that they cannot accept that a woman decides, I don't think I want to go with you anymore? Or if she answers him back, he can decide, well, this is not, quote, respectful to him. I admit domestic violence is also perpetrated by women, although to a much less lower degree. But I think we have to look at this. How do we perceive each other? And it goes back to the kind of training and socialization that our children get from the inception. And you may know I've always been an advocate of HFLE from nursery, because that is when young people learn to understand who and what they are, and why they are different, and why they are like other people. So if we start with age-appropriate language at the nursery level, explaining, these are boys, these are girls, this is how boys respond to threats, this is how girls respond to threats. So you don't have this image, which is also perpetrated in our advertising, I think, and some of the shows, of this muscled macho man, proving his strength and his power wherever he goes. That we can have an equally powerful male who doesn't have to lift a finger and who doesn't have to shout and be abusive to prove he's a man. So that is one aspect of it. We also have to train our girls and our women that they're not there to be the pounding boards of whoever they're going with at the time. They do not have to accept the abuse. It is not their role in life to be beaten or disrespected in any way. So I think it's a lot of how we deal with the social issue. We also have to look at the economic issues, because many times women stay with a man because they say, how can I mind my children? I have nowhere else to go. We have instances where families tell the wife she has to go back. It's your husband. But face it, when they took their vows, regardless of religion, it was vowing to respect and honor each other, not to have one person dominating and in control of the other. With respect, of course. So we have to think of all these things, and when we look at how we address them, we start with the laws. Many times cases are not pursued because the victim might go back and say, he's a good boy, it's only when he drink up a little bit, he won't fight. But that is not the point. The point is he must not feel that she deserves a blow if she doesn't cook what he wants when he comes in, or she puts the food down in front of him in front of his friends and he feels it's not respectful. All sorts of foolish explanations that are given. So we have to look at that. But my view has always been, if a case is reported, regardless of what comes after, regardless of whatever compensation the perpetrator or his family might pay to the victim and her family, the case must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And people have to understand that this is a serious crime. Now, there's another facet of it that we take into account. How will the woman survive financially? And I know that Brazil, a few years ago, had set up a system whereby domestic violence perpetrators had to agree to undergo a course. I guess you could call it a course of re-education, where they started to really examine, with assistance from social workers and psychologists, so the roots of their behavior. And that's what we have to look at. What is causing this behavior? What is also causing all the neighbors to sit around or stand around and either be entertained by the woman being beaten or abused, or just keep quiet because it's not their business? I do think we have to really start meshing as a community to understand that what affects one affects all. Because if you talk to the kids who grew up in those environments, they believe that is the norm. They believe blows and kicking and thumping are the norm. So we cannot expect them to behave differently. The girls believe that they're supposed to be beaten. And even when I was very young, I know a young lady who said, he's beat me because he loved me. Well, that's when she come into work with bruises and black eye and all sorts of things. So it's a question of really rethinking how we look at interpersonal relationships and look at one of the types of relationships that should be a loving and respectful and productive one.
First Lady, if you had to say there's three things that we have to do to curb the situation in Ghana, what would you say they are?
Three things you said?
Yes.
Well, first, as I said, it's how we socialize our children, boys and girls. That's the first thing. The second thing I recognize is that a lot of our young men don't have role models close to the home or in the home. So we have to look at how do we help our young men as they grow to address their the development of their characters and their personalities, what it is that makes them what I would call a viable human being. That would be the second thing, to see how we get our men and our boys engaged in this process. And the third thing, of course, is educating and empowering our women so that they do not feel trapped in any relationship, whether for social reasons or economic reasons.
And lastly, First Lady, if you were to send a message for any victim of domestic violence, any person who's living in a relationship that is characterized by violence, what would be your word of advice to them at this time?
Well, I always tell people I don't like to advise people, because sometimes the person might have totally different feelings. But I think one of the things that a perpetrator likes to do is isolate the victim. So I think victims could seek someone they trust and can speak to, so that they can get advice and get assistance from that person. It doesn't have to be a person in a position of authority. It could be a relative or a friend or somebody in the neighborhood who they know would listen to them in confidence without running up and down the neighborhood talking out this story. But really finding somebody you can confide in as a woman, basically as a victim, and talking your story so that you can get the help you need.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
All right, thanks for staying with us. You would have been watching a conversation there with First Lady Sandra Granger, First Lady of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Her Excellency Sandra Granger, Mrs. Sandra Granger. She was being interviewed there by one of the staff at the Communications Department, the President's Communication Department, actually, at Ministry of the Presidency. And it was based on what we continue to see happen to our women. Of course, I was giving my thoughts even before we went to that clip. I'm not sure if we're streaming live today. We usually are streaming live on the CNS Channel 6 Facebook pages. If we are streaming live, hello and good day to those viewers tuning in via the CNS Channel 6 Facebook pages. And we still have some more to get to. One of the things that the APNU AFC government continues to reiterate and stress is the fact that they've done a lot for youth, despite some of the things that we're seeing the opposition coming out to begin their campaign on, which is getting much criticisms, rightly so. I know the current reigning Chutney monarch came out. Yes, I paused because sometimes I don't follow the various whether it's so-called Chutney monarchs and so on, but I know definitely the current reigning Chutney monarch, the Chutney king, had to do a disclaimer video yesterday, and it was on most of our local evening news. Basically, it was a disclaimer saying that he did not get permission for himself and another artist, I think Mr. Brandon Harding, our local comedian Chow Pao. They did not give permission for their photo to use for the photograph with themselves and some other supporters to be used on one of the posters. And it's interesting, and the PPP used it. Obviously, that's the way they do things. They bully people. A few weeks ago, there was a photo of myself circulating, those of you who follow. And I decided not to dwell on it too much back then because I really didn't want to give them relevance, the PPP relevance. But it's happening now. We're in the season and they're campaigning, and the AP and UAFC is also campaigning. So we have to point out the wrongs, even, if unfortunately it gives them some relevance. The same thing happened to me a few weeks ago. There was a photo circulating with some words, the way that I don't even speak. My photograph, the image, of course, is me, and the words there purporting to support the current, he's supposed to be the current opposition candidate supposed to be their presidential candidate. But hey, who knows? I mean, if that's their taste in a presidential candidate, fine. We shouldn't criticize them for that. But we're all only human. But my point is, on any side, regardless of which side of the political aisle you're on, you should not use anyone's image without their permission, especially these entertainers. Come on. These young men, especially the young men who appeared on, who were on the poster that the PPP used, they perform other places regionally. They go out of Guyana and perform. They don't necessarily, whether they support a certain political party or not, they don't want to be on a poster, because remember, when they're entertaining all of Guyana, any side of Guyana. So they don't necessarily want to appear, whether they're secretly or not, support a political party. So it's a case where we need to respect boundaries and respect what is right. I mean, it is unethical, it is immoral. There's everything wrong with just using someone's image and either claiming that they say that they are, you even create words, you put words in their mouth, for want of a better phrase, and you're saying that they're supporting, or you use, because once you use someone's image, even if you're not saying that they said they support, you use somebody's image and link them to a political party, automatically that's what's happening. People are saying, okay, they're supporting this party or that party. So I want to appeal to both sides, even my side, the government side, and in this case, I'm stressing the opposition side, because mostly in the last few weeks and few months, we've been seeing it coming from them. You can't use people's image without their permission, so we should stop that. But again, it's what we call silly season, so silly things are going to occur. And I digressed from talking about youth to going to that, because some of in this case, they're going to be using some of the youth. But I want to focus a bit on youth and what the APNU AFC administration would have done for youth. Despite the criticisms, I've always been very frank with you on this program, even in the early years, in the beginning. I myself criticized my own government and saying, look, I don't think you have done so and so that should have been done. But you learn. As you go, you learn and you understand that you can provide for your country's youth, not by necessarily walking through the communities, because that is the other thing we're hearing now. Oh, so-and-so buddy, when so-and-so was in government, used to just walk and give us 5,000 or give us 1,000, and we ain't got to work for it. Now the AP and UAFC coming to tell us about empowerment, and they're providing the opportunities. Yes, and that is the right way to go. I was at a meeting last evening, and I was even saying to the group, I am never going to advocate or support any leader walking through any community or any area and just handing out money willy-nilly. Provide the opportunities for our young people to take advantage and let them get up and get. When you give them fast money, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to live fast and die young. And so I know I'm sounding very harsh, but that is the truth. You can't continue to just give handouts. You have to provide the opportunities and let them get empowered. Empower themselves. Stop planting it in their heads that, this is the way to go. Look, they ain't giving you money. We sharing out money. Come on our side. And what money they're sharing out? Taxpayers' dollars that was stolen for how many years? But that's all I'll say on that for now. What I'll do is let the clip from a press conference, I think this was week before the last, where the PNCR addressed what the APNU AFC government would have done thus far, the opportunities that would have been provided thus far for our country's youth. This is Facing the Nation.
Ladies and gentlemen of the media, good morning. Welcome to another press conference hosted by the People's National Congress Reform. Today with me, we have Central Executive Committee member Mr. Aubrey Norton, and to my extreme left, National Chairman of the Guyana Youth and Student Movement, Mr. Ryan Belgrave. Today's press statement will be read by Mr. Norton.
Thank you. The People's National Congress Reform welcomes the decision of the Honorable Chief Justice Madam Roxanne George Rachel that the house-to-house registration is legal. This decision is in keeping with the Caribbean Court of Justice ruling that it is not within the court's remit to identify a date for the elections. It should also be noted that the Honorable Chief Justice reaffirmed the CCJ ruling that election matters fall within the jurisdiction of the President and the Guyana Elections Commission. It seems logical, therefore, that GECOM has the authority to compile a new register of registrants in keeping with the law. The PPP attempts, therefore, to suggest that the house-to-house registration is useless is just another ploy. The people of Ghana, therefore, will pay no attention to yet another attempt by the PPP to mislead the people of Guyana. The house-to-house registration is a legal process which permits the people of Guyana to register. It will ensure that there is a new credible list that will result in credible elections. In this regard, the PNCR wishes to urge all Guyanese to operate within the confines of the law by registering. We wish especially to urge the youth of Guyana to register. It is the youth of Guyana, among others, who are benefiting from the decisions of the Granger-led APNU plus AFC government. The PNCR is proud of the APNU plus AFC Granger-led coalition accomplishment, especially the policies and programs geared towards the development of Guyana's youth population. The drafting of a national youth policy, the launch of the Guyana Youth Corps, the training of youth generally, the creation of employment for youth, the training and financing of young people in small businesses, the ending of extrajudicial killing of our youth, the increase of scholarship for youths, the measures taken to improve the public education system, and the measures to reduce illiteracy and innumeracy have all resulted in hope among the youth of Guyana. A mere 4 years ago, the youth was hopeless. They lived in fear of the police even if they were law-abiding. The school dropout rate was very high. The illiteracy and numeracy rate was extremely high. There was little or no training available to them. Under the PPP, Guyana youth were forced into enjoying the crumbs that fell from the table of the drug lords. Serious crime was the order of the day. People committed crimes while the Guyana police force lacked the capacity to bring criminals to justice, and our youth were living in a country in which the rich and powerful, aligned to the criminal state, did as they pleased, making Guyana a lawless and dangerous place. Our youth existed in a state of hopelessness. The APNU plus AFC Granger-led coalition government designed policies, programs, and projects that have restored hope. Ghana is now a state in which the development of youth is guided by a youth policy, which places focus on the education and training of young people. People for employment and for business. Thousands of young people have been employed and continue to benefit from the Youth Innovation Project in the form of startup financing and financial literacy and small business management training. More than 1,000 young people have been able to start their own businesses. The APNU-AFC government continues to invest heavily in the education sector since, and as President Bridges stated, and I quote, "Young people will succeed only if the performance of the public education system is improved," unquote. We have seen marked improvement of students at the CXC and generally throughout the education system. For the many youths who drop out of school or fail to obtain the required number of subjects to work or pursue higher education, there has been the establishment of free night school by the APNU-led APNU plus AFC government. The PNCR wants to assure all Guyanese, especially our youths, when the APNU plus AFC returns to power, the night schools will be increased across the country to ensure all youths have access to a second chance at obtaining the education they need to enjoy the good life. The APNU plus AFC recognizes that not all youths are academically inclined and that there is need for other forms of training. It is to this end that the Guyana Youth Corps was launched. And as President Green just said again, and I quote, "To help those students who fail or who leave the formal education system but are unprepared or under-equipped for the world of work." Programs such as the Patient Care Program provide employment for young people with a sound education background. It also enables these young people to enter the health sector and develop themselves into professional healthcare workers. The government has and will continue to develop programs to give school dropouts a second chance. The PNCR is convinced that this is one way we can develop the youths who had no hope under the People's Progressive Party. The APNU-AFC recognizes that our youth is a human resource to develop. We are aware that there is need to rectify the youth leadership deficit that existed under the previous government. The government therefore trained thousands of young people in leadership and provided them with the tools they need to work among their peers and place their communities on the course to sustainable development. Many youths are now placed in both appointed and elected positions in our society. It should be recognized that one of the significant things that the APNU plus AFC did for youth is to take action to reduce crime and make Guyana a safer place to live. The astute management of the security sector has created a safer society for the youth of Guyana. We are restoring dignity in labor and training the youth so that we shift them away from the PPP-induced culture of getting rich quick at all means and ensuring that our youth live law-abiding and productive lives and live in a society that is based on law and order. Our youths are now on the path to genuine development. We are aware that there are still youth problems to be solved. The youth is assured, however, that they are on the correct path and will vote overwhelmingly for the APNU plus AFC government to return to power. I thank you.
Thank you, Principal Staff Reviews. Mr. Norton, in your capacity, I'm not sure if you're speaking here in your capacity as head of the Office of Migration, but I would wonder if you would speak to us a little bit about what that office is doing.
Well, the truth of the matter is that I plan addressing the issues here. If you want to deal with the issues of migration, I would first prefer the ministers to speak on it, and then I will if the minister so decides.
Gordon Mosley, News Source. Sir, with regards to the ruling by the Chief Justice, she has said, With regards to the ruling by the Chief Justice, she has said and reiterated that a vote of no confidence was probably passed way back in December, and so elections should have been held by the 21st of March. And the opposition leader has since said that what that means is that for all this time, the government has been illegal and has been usurping power it doesn't have. How would you respond to that?
Well, first thing I would say to you is that we have already established that the government is not illegal. And we have already established that to read Section 6 without Section 7 is really not to deal with the law properly. However, one understands the nature of the opposition leader comments. First of all, the opposition leader is in a place where he hopes to get power at all costs. The government is clear in its head, it's operating legally. The Election Commission has jurisdiction over when elections are called, and the minute the Election Commission says to the President that we are prepared and ready and there's a credible list, there will be elections. One cannot stop the opposition leader from enjoying press coverage. All we can do is to point out that a lot of the coverage is aimed at getting political power through creating confusion, and we'll do everything to ensure that that doesn't occur.
But sir, do you think the message may be getting across? You know, you're complaining about, you're saying that, you know, he's trying to get into power at all costs. But do you think that message is getting across?
Which message?
His message.
What is his message?
I think government illegal and all of that.
Well, look, in politics, people take sides. To you and to him, the message might be getting through. But when we travel the length and breadth of this country, people overwhelmingly endorse David Granger and the present government. They see this government as a ray of hope. They remember clearly that when we were in opposition and the PPP was the government, that every day you open the newspaper, there was crime. They remember that many of their children died extrajudicially. They remember that the people who were linked to the People's Progressive Party and had power did as they like, when they like, how they like, and were not brought to justice. And many of those things have changed. The Guyanese people will drive Guyana, walk Guyana, and see that we have restored drainage and irrigation. We have reduced flooding considerably. And so I think the message that is getting over is that this government has delivered on many of its promises, and that Guyana is on the right path, and that they are seeing development. I was in a particular village the other day, and people were commenting on the quality of roads that are much better than what was delivered to them. I don't know what message is getting over and to whom. What I do know is that we have, as a government, we have served Guyana well, we have restored decency, we have restored integrity. Guyana is on the right path, and we'll continue on that path.
And finally from me, sir, the party, the PNC reform, we have seen two members walking away from the party, Dave Danny and Dave Danny Jr. It's not often that you see a party in power losing members to the other side. So how would you respond to that? What do you think the party needs to do to hold on to its membership?
Listen to me. You might say they're a party out of power, but they're a party with a lot of illegal wealth at their disposal. There was a party that was linked to a criminal state in which they access drug resources, backtracking resources. So while they might not be government, they have filthy lucre that they can share out and give out and cause the weak, cause the vacillating to move. So to us, it's not a surprise. One young lady who was PNC walk and boast across the country that the PPP bought a car for she, a house for she sister, and they are comfortable with that. The problem with that is that it doesn't address the problems of the wider society. What we are seeking to do as a government is to address people concerned across the board and ensure they get a good life. If two people opt for a good life because of immediate self-gratification, then we can't do anything about that. What I can say to you, however, is that 2 might have left. We don't advertise how many came, including from the PPP, but many have.
Maybe because one from the neutral. You mentioned that more than 1,000 young people have been able to start their own businesses. How did you arrive at this number?
We arrived at it from the data, from training. If you go to the Guyana Marketing Corporation, you will see a number of products by young people. And if you travel the length and breadth of this country, you will see young people producing, marketing things, and other institutions can provide you the information, like small business, etc. But the evidence across the country is that young people are in business. Some of them you don't want to identify, but on the contrary, or at least I can name it like 4 or 5 offhand. But you know, once you identify them, the PP goes after them, and then they get in market, etc. So, but there are a lot of them across the country. In Linden, which was neglected by the People's Progressive Party over the years, there are many people, young people, who are involved in business. I can also say this to you. More than 70 young people have been trained in apiculture and have established honey business and are now making local products from honey and its byproducts. So the evidence across the country exists. And mind you, I didn't deal with the indigenous communities where many young people set up IT business and a number of other businesses. And if you go and check on the Youth Innovation Project, you will see the resources that were allocated and where the young people are. And very important to note, we didn't identify an ethnic group. We serve all Guyanese. One of the successes and hallmark of this government is that it has served all Guyanese, regardless of ethnicity, region, whether the PPP or the APNU want it or not, they enjoy the services because we're hoping to make a better life for all Guyanese.
There being no more questions, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for coverage of today's press conference, and we look forward to further engagements. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right, a press conference there from the People's National Congress Reform that would have been held maybe 2 weeks ago. The reason I know Comrade Norton, of course, an executive member of the People's National Congress Reform, he started off by talking about, because back then the press conference came on the heels of the ruling of the Chief Justice. I know he started off by talking about that, but he delved into youth. Of course, you know, when I introduced the clip, I talked about the fact that we brought to the fore the amount of things that would have been done for you, the opportunities, not things done for them. Let me rephrase, because people believe that walking through communities and handing out monies is things being done for them, but I'm talking about opportunities being provided. Aubrey Norton mentioned a number of them. But before I continue, for those of you who are watching who are going to be watching on YouTube, and even those of you in social media, in Facebook land, if at a certain point you see a long pause or I don't know, the screen may be black, that's GPL doing its usual work for us. We had a power outage, and sometimes I wonder, and you know, in my head, I'm not accusing them of anything, but sometimes I just wonder about GPL's intentions. The minute Aubrey Norton began to talk about the atrocities committed on our youth under the PPP administration, and then he was about to switch over to the good things that would have been done for our youth by this administration, this APNUAFC administration, GPL took the electricity, and it took some time for our technical persons here to switch over to generators. So sometimes I really and truly wonder about your intentions, GPL. Just note that, and I'm not the only person who wonder about your intentions, but I just find it interesting that the time the electricity came off. I trust, I saw someone put up on, had it on Facebook, posted recently. I mean, it was basically just for laughs on social media, that they don't even think Guyana's oil money can help GPL. And I so believe them, because GPL, I don't know, maybe the good Lord has to send his son back to deal with you directly for you to get it right. And, you know, stop. Sometimes I see it as you as GPL taking advantage of Guyanese people. Come on, you have to do better than this. Maybe if the monopoly is sometime broken, you know, we wouldn't have to deal with what we deal with almost daily from the Guyana Power and Light Incorporated. I know some of you are there saying, oh, she's beating up on GPL, but at this point, the entire Guyana is beating up on GPL, regardless of which political side of the fence you're on. We're almost out of time. I don't have enough time to bring you clips from the press conference with Minister Felix, but at this point I don't think you need it because he would have been here even before that press conference, and he spoke to our country, our viewers and so on extensively. So for now, I'm going to begin to wrap up today's program. Just to remind you, as I started off the program by telling you about today's PNCR's press conference, where the PNCR General Secretary read a statement regarding what is happening, the fact that the current house-to-house registration comes to an end on the 31st of August 2019, which is tomorrow, Saturday. So you still have a few more hours, and I know some people are panicking, but there will also be the extensive, and again, I'm quoting extensive. This is a term that has been peddled out there. I can't say specifically that extensive, the word extensive came from the GECOM Chair herself, but I'm telling you the word being peddled out there is extensive claims and objections period. So you still have some time to, for want of a better phrase, put your houses in order. I'm not sure if these things are rumors, but we saw, well, I shouldn't say it's a rumor because it's in one of our daily newspapers that there are people in a certain region who they're in possession of ID cards, who are not in possession of ID cards and don't have source documents. Source documents, of course, it's always a learning experience. Source documents meaning either a passport or a birth certificate. Some people, they have ID cards. They would have gotten it during the time of the previous administration. And I know one young lady who indeed would have voted twice, and she doesn't have, again, a birth certificate nor a Guyanese passport. So what does that tell you? But today we see one of the headlines is that there are persons found in a certain community with fake birth certificates. And, we're new levels, when you're desperate to take power, somebody was asking, they wonder why they're so, I don't think it's a question now as to why they're so desperate to get their hands on power again, that they, by any means necessary. So while you're supporting even the people who are supporting them, while you're supporting your political parties, please be watchful. Ensure that you always protect yourselves. Look out for yourselves, because desperation makes people do evil things. And unfortunately, evil exists in every society in this world, regardless of which country you live. So just be on the lookout. There is a desperation for some people to get their hands on Guyana's resources, as though it was, to use the word that my colleague Tandai McAllister uses often, my political colleague. She says they behave as though Guyana was bequeathed to them and and their children and so on. So be watchful, be on the lookout. Again, desperate times, desperate measures. Some people will do almost anything to get their hands on power, because that is the only way they feel some sort of self-satisfaction and some sort of relevance. If you take the power and the control away from them, they feel as though they're nothing. So that is what is happening, unfortunately, in certain sections of our society for now. I'll have to leave our program there. As always, thank you very much for inviting me into your homes and letting us give you information that hopefully, we hope that you use in a sensible manner and to help you understand things better. I always urge you to be good Guyanese citizens. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And next month, next week Friday, I'm not sure who we're going to be having on, but remember, Amerindian Indigenous Heritage Month is coming up, when we celebrate our Indigenous brothers and sisters. So look forward for maybe some features and conversations regarding that section of our population. I always urge you to be good Guyanese citizens. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Those of you who are now tuning in, you'll get the entire program on my YouTube channel and Facebook page a little later on in the day. I am Malika Ramsey. This has been Facing the Nation, and thanks for watching.